Thank you for tuning in to the Happy Hearts podcast with your host, Becca. Rate and subscribe as we power you to live with love. Sensitive subject. We are going to be delving into things that could be triggering. I will be linking in the description some numbers that you can call if you are affected by anything that we cover today, or if you feel like you need some support. I'll be linking numbers and contact details for support and helplines for the US and Canada and the UK. You can also reach out to me, Leeza, and our team. You can connect with us by clicking the link in our bio or in our link tree. That will take you to the website. You can subscribe there. You can send us messages. There's also, we have a WhatsApp messaging service, so you can ask any questions that you feel comfortable in asking there, and we can try and advise you there. We also have a hub that is powered by Spaces by Wix. And the link for that will be in the description to this video. If you're watching on Instagram with Leeza, you're very welcome to hop into the YouTube. But either way, we'll be taking questions all the way through. We'll be reading your comments, and this is just like a comfortable space where we can share, we can express how our journeys, and we can, come together and, discuss topics that aren't always openly discussed. I know that there is a lot of awareness of depression now and how relative it is in younger people as well as everybody else. But I feel like there's not a lot of people that talk about their experiences with it. So that's why we're holding this today, is to, give everybody an experience of making it a little bit normalized. I hate that word, but normalize talking about it and expressing yourself freely without judgment. And that's one thing that Happy Hearts House does, is we like to give space where there's no judgment, where you can be comfortable in being yourself, expressing yourself how you need to, and you get encouragement and support to do so. So Leeza, I'll let you talk and lead us into the conversation.
So depression is a pretty big deal. Especially I've had direct, relationship with depression, capital D. And it's definitely something that is becoming more, I'll say, tolerable within society at the moment. But as you said, it's, there's still room to grow, and that's what we're trying to do here right now. So one thing I want to start off by is just talking about what is depression and how can you recognize it, and it's in you or in someone else, and it will change person by person. It's not going to be the same thing, and it's going to be different depending on who you talk to. Everyone who's going through it is going to go through it differently. So one thing if you can recognize it in yourself, is that it's a lack of joy in your life. Things that may once have brought you happiness, or things that have made you feel any type of joy, are no longer bringing you joy, no longer making you feel anything, sort of, and there's that void of feelings within you. That's, I think, one of the biggest things. And I also want to state that there is a difference between depression, which is what we're going to talk about today, and being depressed and feeling that sadness. There's definitely a difference between the two. And when you're feeling depressed, everyone feels depressed now and then, when, you know, things may not be going your way or whatnot. But when we're talking about is depression, and depression is when you may be feeling depressed for over long periods of time. And the guidelines right now is if you're feeling these things for a week and a half to 2 weeks, that's when it's gets to be its most prevalent. So anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that you know, when you touch on the topic of what brings you joy, it's not just that those things don't bring you joy anymore. It may be that you've lost the things that bring you joy. Like it feels like you've forgotten the things that bring you joy, or you don't have the connection with that. And it can make you feel less of a person. So feeling less than, I feel definitely comes into being, you know, having depression. And yes, I definitely do think that there's a difference between being depressed and having depression. Depression has a lot of I don't know the word that I'm looking for. It has a lot of an effect on your internal body.
Yes.
And your external body as well. It's not just an emotion or a feeling. It's chemical imbalance.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's changes in thought patterns. It can make you physically ill as well. Like, so it shows on the outside.
And it may show.
A lot of people, a lot of people can get good at masking, but there will always be cracks, and it's the cracks that we need to be aware of. And I was thinking that how we share our stories today might help somebody being able to recognize those types of cracks, because they might be ever so small, you know?
Yeah. And I think that it's important just to say, I'm just going to tell you guys some personal stories about when I was going through depression. And so one of the way it sort of started off for me is with stomach aches. And I would get a lot of like these really bad stomach aches, and I would just say I'm nauseous, or you know, I'm getting sick, and I would be sick from school all the time. And I didn't realize it was mental. I didn't realize that's what it was, but I was a little bit younger, and I was just like, I know I have a stomach ache, and I know I'm getting really bad stomach aches. And as I started to, this happened more, sometimes my eating patterns would be off sometimes, but it all started very physical for me. And then I would also, with the stomach aches, I started to tell myself very negative ideas. And my word that I used was worthless. And I would tell myself I was worthless, and I would tell myself that I didn't deserve the things that I had, that it didn't matter. I would say that, you know, anything that I would try, I would fail at. I would tell myself that, you know, nothing was really worth it. And so when you start telling yourselves these this running dialogue of you can't do it, you're not worth it, all of these negative things that basically you're stripping away the self-love in yourself, then you're gonna feel hopeless, like you're going to just, like, nothing matters, and what's the point of anything? And that sort of starts to get you into this downward spiral, into this darkness where, and I always pictured it sort of like a hole, but not really, but just a room of darkness that went with you wherever you had to go. And for me, I was someone who was very, friendly and upbeat. So I did mask myself a lot. And I would pretend that I was okay, and it would take absolutely all my energy to just say, I'm fine. It's what everyone feels this way. And people have it so much worse than me.
Yes, that's one of the things that does come up.
And
people thinking, diminishing their own story. Yeah.
Finding ways to say, well, it doesn't matter, because, and I would always assume, well, if I told someone that I was feeling this kind of way, or that this was in my mindset, then I would be admitting that in some type of way I was weak. And that's something that I want to stress, is that feeling depression, feeling these types of things does not make you weak in any sort of the way of the word. It's you're strong. The strength is admitting that this is how you feel, and owning up this. Okay, so I feel this way, and knowing that it's okay to feel the way you're feeling, no matter what it is that you're feeling.
Yes, definitely. I think the thing that I really believe in is that vulnerability is strength. And the last few months I've, confirmed that for me. The more that you open up yourself, you're not just opening up to other people, you're opening up for yourself. You're creating growth within yourself, and being vulnerable is powerful, because it allows you to go inside and bring out parts of you that have been hidden for some sort of reason, and in my own journey with depression, a lot of what was my problem is that I tended to not only internalize my own emotions and punish myself, but I also internalized other people's emotions and punished myself for their emotions. If I couldn't make people happy, then what was my purpose? What was the point in me being here? And being a mom and having a family, everything, all the little things that get said, because kids aren't always happy with their parents, and as much as we like to try and not take things to heart what they say, if we're in a sensitive place, then it's going to have an effect, and even though we know they're not old enough to mean what they're saying, but if you're already feeling that way, it's basically that child is words are just cutting deeper, basically, but it's not on them, it's on us. I should say on me, because this is my personal journey. I went through life trying to please people, because that's how I thought that I would receive love. I thought that if I give myself completely, I thought that if you love somebody, you gave yourself completely. That's all it was, that you became that person's person, and you would, you know, you had an obligation to that person because, you know, you give it unconditionally, but I didn't realize that I could give that to myself as well, and that it was important to do so. So I didn't have a balance. And then when situations did arise that were highly stressful or were highly emotional situations, I wasn't able to handle them well. I wasn't able to focus on solution finding because I was too clouded by guilt, by, you know, punishing myself, hatred for myself, because I wasn't good enough. I couldn't keep it together. I couldn't make this person happy. I couldn't make this problem go away for them. You know, I couldn't fix it. And yeah,
remember that it's not on us, and that's something that depression does, is that it, I mean, as you said in the beginning, it's a chemical imbalance, and so there, of course, we're going to feel, and anyone who's feeling has depression will feel that imbalance completely, because it's either, I know if there would be different states I would get in where I would need to give everything to someone else and make sure that they were happy, make sure that if they weren't happy, then I took that as a direct reflection of my actions. But now I'm realizing, you know, everyone is responsible for their own happiness. And so in some states I would get so, you know, it's all, I'm giving everything to you, but then I would have nothing in my cup, and I would feel so empty, so drained, that I would lay in bed with just the lights off, not being able to move, because I was so drained that there was nothing left of me. And so I think that's a very important thing to address when you are feeling like that, or if you know someone who may be feeling like that, is to offer them support, and just to offer someone else support who you see is going through this, but offer yourself support and know that it's okay that you're feeling like this. Recognize that you're feeling what you're feeling, and move through the pain and move through it. Because if we try to avoid it, we're just going to dig ourselves in a deeper hole. So by moving through, in one moment or a few moments of uncomfortableness, you're going to break through that and lead to so much joy on the other side.
And when Leeza's saying, you know, move through it, it's an expression to say, let yourself feel, because we have been, as a society, we have been shown that, you know, having feelings is weakness, and that showing feelings, it's frowned upon. People don't want it. It's a burden, you know, and they're directly like, you know, when you're already in that space where you feel like you're a burden, like you don't matter, and then the world is showing that to you, it's like confirmation, right? So then we have a tendency to, you know, hide it, put a mask on, put a smile on our faces. That's one really good thing that I've been good at through the years, is always having a smile on my face. Any of my friends will describe me as being the happy, bubbly one that's always got a smile for everybody, always wants to cuddle and love and laugh and party, you know. But really, it was just all a facade to stop people from seeing the hurt and the pain, because I didn't think it would be accepted, because the world showed me that it didn't want to listen. You know, the world showed me that it wasn't accepted at the time. So it was like visual confirmation that, you know, people didn't want to see the real me. They just wanted to see what they wished to see of me, what benefited them. And it's not like I had those thoughts during that process. It was like I didn't think, oh, well, you know, this evidence is clear, that's how it must be. I didn't have that thought. It was just that internalizing kept on happening. And the more that I saw, you know, that people didn't like people whinging or moaning about their days, you know, that created insecurity, you know.
That was huge.
So, yeah, when we say moving through, we mean to take the emotion that you're feeling and let yourself feel it. However, you need to express that emotion. I mean, there's different outlets. You could draw, you can color, you could sing, you can move your body. You could talk about it if you've got somebody that you really, really trust, or if you would rather talk to somebody outside the situation who is like a stranger, because I know that does help for people when you don't really have an emotional connection to that person. You might not ever see them again, so it doesn't matter what you tell them. It doesn't matter their view. I think that can help. Also journaling, poetry, just to express yourself.
Yeah, basically so that you can get out of your head. Whatever, the more that we hold on to these feelings and the more we bottle them up, the more damage that they are going to do. So to express yourself absolutely any way you can. One of my favorite things to do was to get in my car and either sing really loudly or just scream and just getting it out and getting those emotions from your head out of your body. And I mean, dancing has helped, writing has helped. Sometimes just like, I mean, making sure it's safe, but breaking a couple things has helped a little bit, and just getting out of your way. And I think one thing to think about is when you're in that state, it's going to be hard. It is not an easy thing. This is not I mean, it sounds simple enough, but with the emotions that come and clouding everything, and when you're in that state, it is hard. And no one is going, and you have to allow yourself to accept that it's going to be a journey, and it's not all going to happen overnight.
Yes.
So I had something, I lost it, but
well, I was just saying, I was like going off what you were saying. It wasn't easy at first, you know, breaking out of the depression, because all I wanted to do was lay on the sofa or lay in bed. I didn't want to watch TV. I didn't want to talk to people. I didn't want to answer the door. I didn't want to look after myself. I didn't want to bath. You know, all these kind of things, you know, came up for me. I didn't want, and I even used things to numb it.
Yes.
And mask it. Like I use food to numb it. A lot of the time, the more low I felt, the more I would eat. And then the more highly stressed I felt, the more I'd forget to eat, or I wouldn't eat properly. And then also I used makeup as a numbing and masking tool, because it brought people's attention away from my feelings and my emotions because I didn't want to share, and brought it onto the outward image instead, because I could control my outward image, but I couldn't control how I felt.
You can
Yes.
control the mask and what you put out there and show everything's fine. And I think in that is a societal thing too, that we have been, you know, conditioned. I've seen many, I mean, what pops into my head is like moms in TV shows that are like, no, everything's fine. We're having it, like, you know, everyone's going to come to dinner and everyone's going to be, we're all going to be, you know, as long as we're doing this, we're fine. But I think it's important to be honest with ourselves. And is it fine? And if it's not fine, how can we change it? And one thing that I really want to emphasize is that no one can change it except for the person going through it. Yes. Only you have the power to change it. If you have someone that you love who's going through depression, who's going through these dark periods, there's nothing you can do until they decide that they want to change and they want to feel they want to get out of it and they want to get through it.
Yes. I feel as well, I mean, it's personal experience, but when I was going through depression multiple times, part of it was because I couldn't heal other people. Like, I was making it my job to try and break people free of their you know, low mood or their depression or their anxiety. I was putting so much focus into theirs that, and then you can even say it was a masking tool as well, you know. But at the same, yeah,
like,
yeah,
but
at the
not.
same, well, it's not. It was more like, well, for me, it was more like, if I was helping other people, then I didn't have to focus on my problems.
Yeah.
I didn't have to deal with it. It could stay behind because it was less important. So I was already making myself less important and then feeling less important. But I was doing it to myself. I was my own worst enemy. You know, and I think
well, I think that's what depression does to you.
Yeah.
It makes it's sort of, in my mind, it like sort of splits you into two. And then the one person, I don't know if any of you have ever seen Big Mouth, but they talk about the depression kitty. And so what happens is there's this entity that sort of goes on top of you and just crushes you, and you feel the weight of the world. And that's not just a metaphor, because you completely feel pressure on you and you feel the weight on your shoulders. You're walking around with all this extra on top of you, and it's not easy to do, and it causes damage. And it's like, if you're going to walk around if you carry around weights with you everywhere you go, your muscles are going to be super sore. So sometimes it's time to drop the weights, and sometimes you drop them on your foot, and then you have to deal with that. But
I mean, dropping them on your foot is definitely a waking up call, isn't it?
Yes.
I think like when I was in when I was in my darkest part of my depression, yes, I felt exactly that. It was heavy. I was just slugging around. I was just going through the motions. I wasn't really aware of anything outside or inside myself. I wasn't I was functioning, but I wasn't functioning.
You were surviving.
I was just here. And even that, and it's like a vicious cycle, because the more you feel like you're just existing and there's no reason for it, you know, or you feel like you're a burden, or you feel like you can't help when you should be helping. You know, the more you diminish yourself, the more you feel diminished. The more you diminish yourself, the more you feel diminished, and it's just a vicious cycle, and it's awful to go through, and it's hard to climb back out of that hole once you're in it. It's not an easy road. When I first started, the first thing that I started with to help myself come out was reconnecting with my poetry, what I used to do as a kid. And the only reason why I did that is because I tried to journal, and I couldn't do it. Like, I couldn't do it regularly. I didn't have it in me to every single day write down my emotions. And then by the time I got time to write them down, I don't remember what's happened through the day, because there's that fog. You know, there's brain fog with depression. You don't know what's happened. You know, most of the time.
Nothing.
Yeah.
If you try and look behind you, it's just a whole fog, as you said. There's nothing there. And because it's that darkness, that depression, that kind of is mixing up inside of it and just carrying it with you. And so one thing about like journaling, I mean, I think that's helped me a bunch. I definitely didn't journal as much as I could. I journaled and I wrote poetry, but what helped me the most was singing, which funnily enough was something that I was told I shouldn't do. And so, which made me more depressed. But it was when I was in the shower, when I was by myself, when I was, you know, like driving in the car, I would just sing. And it's a way to help with your breathing, and you're getting deeper breaths, because especially if you're singing from your diaphragm, you're going into your diaphragm and going all the way down. You're getting those big breaths, and it's a way to really help release some of that anger and depression and sadness and emotions. My journey to healing was sort of forced upon me. And this, I'm going to warn, is maybe a bit triggering, as if, and all of this isn't, but little triggering. I was self-harming. And one thing I want to say about that before I continue is that self-harm is not its own entity. It is a symptom of depression. And if you're going to, when you're healing, everyone in my life was focused on the self-harm. So they tried to get me to stop. I was sort of bribed. Well, if you don't self-harm for X amount of days, we'll get you something you want on your wish list. And I was like, okay. And all I would do is, all right, I'll either do it somewhere where no one can see it, or I'll do it, or I was like, I'll just wait and do it when I go off to college, is what I would say to myself. And I was forced to go to a therapist, because so what happened was, my parents found a blade in my wallet. And it was like, at this point I was crying out for help, but not crying out. Like, I was trying to stay silent, but silently I was begging for someone to notice the amount of pain that I was in. But I didn't want anyone to know, because I was so scared of what people would say, what would happen, and any type of change that could take place. And this happened and completely flipped my world upside down. But I was very closed off. I was forced to go to a therapist. I barely said anything to her, and I just, I would fill the sessions with nothing. And it was a journey. and I would, you know, try and rebel against the help that was being offered to me. But I inevitably pushed through, and I'm where I am today. And I never would have thought all those years ago that I would be here today, because depression was not just a way of feeling, but it was something that I clung on to. It was something that I felt made me who I was. It was part of my identity. And if I didn't have my BFF depression, who was I? And so it really.
Yeah, I can definitely yeah, I can identify with you because I mean, for me, it was worry, but my worry led to depression. Um, if I didn't worry, then I didn't have the strategies that I needed to keep control. If I didn't have control, then who was I? You know? So like worry and control were very big for me. And when I don't even know what the thought process was. In fact, yes, actually, I do. When I first wrote my first poem again, it was during the darkest moment of my recent episode with depression. And it was a cry for help. It was a cry to be noticed, because what was happening for me, and I know that it's not the same for everybody, is that I did actually try to reach out for people, but they'd make the topic about themselves, so then I would shut down and stop talking.
Yes.
And I started to realize that this has been quite it's been quite a routine throughout my life, where people didn't seem interested in me or what I had to say. And you know, it was everybody had a play in it, but you know, they might not understand, you know, on a level like that. So I didn't even bother to express it to them, you know. So when I did the poem, I immediately put it on Facebook. And I've deactivated my Facebook and never been on it since, because then people started reaching out, wanting to check on me, wanting to make sure I was all right. They thought it was my suicide note, basically. And I do have plans to share that on my podcast. I'm going to share the journey of my poetries, because that is basically my journal. Because I feel like it's important for people to see that expression isn't scary.
Yes.
And that and through that one poem, I was able, even through that moment, like you can see in the first poem, when I share it and you hear it, you'll hear how it starts to change. My thoughts start to change through it, because I started to flash back to being a child when I was writing poetry, and I actually loved it, you know, and I actually put my expressions and my feelings and my emotions down on paper, and I was able to create an image in people's minds just from my words, and how much I loved that. And you can see that progression happen during that first poem, that I'm thinking differently as I'm going down it. And that is the power of expression. You know, you can start off feeling one kind of way, and then because you have expressed, because you've found an outlet, because you've released it, you've moved through it and you've processed, you're able to feel that tiny bit lighter at the end of that process. And then as the weeks went on, I decided to carry on using that rather than journaling. I decided to carry on using my poetry as a way to write down my feelings and express myself. And then that led to me going back to singing, because when we were kids, me and my sisters, we always sang. My dad is a musician. I call him the music man, he plays everything. And we were brought up on music, you know, it was the heart of the home, it was our happiest memories. And being able to put myself back in that space, I suppose you could say that even when I was writing the poetry, I wasn't really there writing it. I was going inside myself. I was meditating. I was flowing. And it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Even to think about it now, like, it makes my heart warm, because even when I'm doing these episodes, I don't plan what we're going to say, and I have realizations as we're going through them, you know, and you know, it fills me with joy that we're able to speak so freely and express ourselves on what we need to be able to possibly help somebody else out there feel less alone with it, you know, and maybe give people ideas of what they can do for themselves. But when I first started trying to heal myself, like I touched on before, it wasn't easy, and I had to force myself to stick to the routine of doing you know, the poetry. Even though I loved it, it was hard to find the motivation, because obviously through my depression, that's what I lacked. I lacked motivation. I wasn't cleaning the house. I wasn't bathing. I wasn't going out and getting, you know, what I needed for the house. I was dealing with the kids and I was doing things for them, but I wasn't doing, you know, a top job, suppose. You know, if there's so many different ways that it can happen for people, and you know, everybody's is different. Just because mine is different, my story is different to yours, doesn't make yours any less. It doesn't make mine any more, you know, important. And like the next person, what we have all have in common is what we should be looking at, and what we all have in common is something that we need to grow through and learn from, and something that we need to process and move through, you know?
Yes. And I think that also that's, I mean, first, that's a societal thing of judging yourself by the comparing to others and what they did. And that was a huge part of my process. And I said my word was worthless, but it was also pathetic. And pathetic was, well, everyone else had a worse time than me, so I'm really lucky with everything I have, so I shouldn't be feeling this way. Meh, meh, meh. Like, it was, you know, it was very much ripping any type of self apart. But what I want to do is sort of shift a little bit and talk about what you can do if a loved one is feeling like this. Originally, I said you can't do anything. I'm going to retrace my steps here and say there is something you can do. And what you can do is support unconditionally. Ask, what is it that you want? What is it that I can do for you? And I will say, your loved one who's going through depression may have zero idea what they want from you, but just asking the questions, seeing where it is that they are, and if it is I don't know, why are you even asking me, and they get angry about it, calm down. It's not on you. Don't take it personally. Whatever they're saying, do not take it personally. It is not about you. It is about themselves. And so continue on and just say, okay, I'm here for you. And just let them know that you're not judging them. You are simply here if they want to talk. You're simply here if they want to cry. If you're simply here if they want anything with you. And if it's on them at that point, but you're showing that you're there for them, and that means so much.
And it doesn't mean taking their pain and trying to take it away for them, because by doing that, rather than helping them to process through it and develop and take charge of their own feelings and emotion, it's more like you are becoming a crutch and creating codependency, which it doesn't actually heal anything. It makes more problems than you've begun with. I think one of the very big things that I've learned about supporting other people with depression is just do what they ask of you. Have that space open to be able to do what is asked, because even if it's something tiny like making a phone call for them, that might seem little to you,
it could be a mountain,
but it could be massive to them. And it could be a massive game changer for them. It could be something that is the step in the door to the change that they need, and all you did was make a phone call. But at the same time as all you did, you made that phone call. You were the one that got them out of the door, and that is, just it's everything that somebody needs. Just that space. Just give space. Like I'm open. I'm here. No matter what happens, no matter what you're going through, whether we can talk about it or whether you need to have time to do it by yourself, whatever you need, I'm here because I love you. I love you unconditionally, and no amount of pain or pressure or depression or no amount of anything is going to take that away. Because a lot of that, a lot of people through depression that I've experienced is they don't feel like they don't feel like they're needed. They don't feel like they are loved, and they don't feel like
they're worthy of love.
Yes, they're worthy of it. So, as somebody who may support somebody with depression, we might be able to show in our actions, making a cup of tea every morning to wake them up and opening the curtains for them, for giving them, giving them.
Also, sorry, but I think also one thing too is, gouging them as well, and making sure what you're doing is helpful to them. So let's say, I'll use the example, opening the curtains for them. If every day, if for like a couple days you're going in, you're opening the curtains, but you can see them,
being triggered by it.
Like, oh, you're trying to force me to get up, or, that's when you take a step back. And remember, like, you still need to protect you first. And there's nothing that again, don't take it personally, kind of, yes, you're trying to help, but our intentions aren't always what happens. We just got a comment that I'd like to read from Sifu Bagi. First, he said, he says, even you just making them smile a little from a silly post or a silly joke, just a little bit of laughter in their life. Then he says, Taoists have a saying, little ripples make mighty waves, and it's not you to judge what ripple makes a wave. That's beautiful.
Yes, definitely. And that is exactly what I was touching on. It's not, we have to lead off what we see and what we hear. But the challenge that we have is to really open up to listening and being aware.
Listening.
You know, that, I mean, we all think that we listen because we give eye contact, because we're facing that person. That means that we're listening, but are we actively listening? Are you hearing what that person has to say? Are you feeling it? Not too much to take it in, but to understand and to be able to say, okay, so if I was in this position, how would I feel? What would my needs be? Because, you know, yeah, well, not just empathize, but also identifying that you feel it too. You know, like we all have the same emotions, we just feel them or express them in different ways. And, you know, being open to that, that is listening.
Yes.
You know, it's listening from the inside.
Yes. And I will say sometimes it may be difficult to understand if you've never felt the depth. I know that some people in my life, you know, they tried and they were hearing what I was saying. They didn't really know what to make of it. Like
that's a big question. Do we need to know what to make of it to help someone?
That's very
no, because that's judging.
That's true.
You know, and it's meant to be judgment free. If you were caring for somebody, why do you need to know why they're doing it? It doesn't matter. That's not the important thing. What the important thing is that they're feeling this way and they need you to support them, you know. And I think that we're focused on why, because staying on the why means that we don't have to deal with the bigger issue. Like you said with the self-harm, everybody was focused on the self-harm instead of seeing that the self-harm, so they weren't really hearing it.
Yeah.
Because it was a visual sound. You know, it's a vibration of movement. You know, you were acting it out.
And to express myself in an unhealthy way.
Yes. So if they were really hearing it, they would have seen, actually, okay, maybe there's an underlying problem here. And that's what we need to be focused on. And then by directly focusing on the underlying problem, then maybe, just maybe, the acting out in the negative way will turn into a healthy way of expression, you know.
I also want to talk about, for anyone who thinks about or participates in self-harm, some ways to potentially get the same feeling or the same release without actually hurting yourself. And there's a couple things you can do. One thing you can do is putting tape on yourself and slowly peeling the tape off. Another thing you can do is either get red marker or red food dye and putting that on wherever it is that you have or want to, and putting a Band-Aid over it. So that way you get that visual, but you're not harming yourself, and you're taking steps, however small they may be, you're taking the steps.
For yourself to heal. One episode of depression that I had, I went to cognitive behavioral therapy, and one thing that she taught me, you know, to stop me self-harming is to have an elastic hair tie around my wrist, and when I felt like I wanted to harm myself, I would flick the hair tie, because it wasn't uncomfortable, but it was enough to give me the, okay, I'm here, you know, this is real, you know, that kind of a sensation. And also it helped me with my anxiety because it gave me a fidget when I was feeling uncomfortable. So that was like one of them. And then I would say that another thing that she helped me, it was actually my first introduction to like EFT. And it was a lot of this one, and tapping of the wrists. And also she had me, you know, tapping on my knees as well. So they were more for like focusing the energy into the different parts of the body. Amanda, who is on joining us live on YouTube, has said that's why I started wearing hair ties around my wrist. Now it's just a habit. It's exactly the same for me. Normally I have a hair tie. I don't even have any real hair. No. And I still have hair ties around my wrist most of the time. I think I wanted to touch on as well about, you know, suicidal thoughts, because this is the kind of thing that gets brought up when you go to see, if you do go to see a GP or a doctor. One thing that does get up is, do you have suicidal thoughts? And when I first recognized myself as having depression, and I did seek help, I used to say no, but I was. The reason why I used to say no is because I didn't want to harm myself.
Yeah.
I didn't want to do it myself. I wanted somebody else to do it.
Yeah.
So I used to have, and it was a counselor that it was actually, no, it was a CBT therapist that actually, and that was years after, that actually made me aware that actually those are still suicidal thoughts, because you're not wanting to be here anymore, you know. I was like in a place where I would walk in the middle of the road, you know, and not swerve if a car came or a bus came, you know.
Started not wearing
I don't want to
and
I don't want to be giving anybody ideas. That's not what this is for. But I wanted to say that we can't keep not having these conversations and not making people aware, you know, that everybody has an experience, not everybody, but a lot of people have experiences with depression, and that we're not alone. We can't not have these conversations because it could be triggering, you know, because it might be triggering in the sense that it helps someone realize that there's a community out there that could help me, you know.
We've got a comment here from Boggy who says that first, it's been many times I've simply sat there and listened to people, helped them a lot, and I didn't say anything. And that's very important. Just having someone to listen to them, for them to be able to express what they're saying. Also, for self-harm, tapping, but also fire qigong breath. Breath is actually very good for depression and self-harm. 30 long, deep breaths, then hold your breath for a minute. Then a long breath in, hold it for 10 seconds, then breathe out. And breathing is a huge way, because it's something, it quiets the mind. It's something for you to focus on. Another great trick, which I've been learning on TikTok recently, is anytime you're overthinking, is to take the tongue from the bottom, from the roof of your mouth and release it. And that's something, when you overthink, your tongue is there. So if you notice yourself thinking, just check your tongue. Where is it? And
always at the roof of my mouth. Always.
Yeah. So it's just, you know, and have compassion for yourself, I think is the big thing too. Like, not just now, not just in the moment, but if you've been through it, have compassion for yourself, because just because you've been through it, there are relapses and it happens. And then in some cases it's even worse than originally. And, you know, remember, like, any time that this is happening, we can get through it.
Yeah, definitely. I think that the last time before previously that I had an episode with depression was before, during, and after I had given birth to Ava, my eldest daughter, my eldest child. And you know, I came through that, but I didn't necessarily do anything, you know, to come through it. I was dependent on Ava. I was so concentrating on the baby and her development, and I spent a lot of years fighting for Ava. I thought that I just naturally moved through it. And Ava is 10 now. And it was last year when I started with depression again. And it was hard because I thought this was it. This is it. This is the end now. You know.
But it's only the end if you choose for it to be the end.
And that's something that I wanted to touch on, is that we have choices. Even having no choice, or us saying I've got no choice, means there's a choice. It's what you're choosing. Are you choosing yourself? Are you going to choose to give up on yourself? You know? Excuse me.
Yeah, and I think, as you said, even saying I don't have a choice is a choice. And we have a choice whether we want to stay where we are or find a way to move through it and maybe change, which is scary. And I'm not saying that these choices don't have weight to them, but it's still a choice and it's yours to make. No one else's.
I think it's whether you are ready, and you've got to be ready for yourself, not for how it might improve your family's life or how it might improve your partner's life or your children's life. It's got to be that you're doing it for yourself, because unless you're doing it for yourself, it's not going to have an effect that's lasting.
I have a bit of a story on that one. When I said how I was sort of forced into therapy, I decided to get better. And I put quotes on that because I said, all right, I see the people in my life are in pain because of what I'm doing. So let me just do what I can to make them feel better. And I thought that I was getting better. And I was like, okay, like I didn't feel all the same things. And you'll get a surface betterness. But it's not until I separated myself from everyone else, I wasn't truly healing. And it takes a lot to take the mask off. Even if your mask, it's like a mask on top of a mask, because you have your depression mask and then you have the trying to get better mask, and then it's just even more overwhelming. And so it's, doing these things for you is very important.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think that's um, what I was getting at. Like when I had my episode around Ava's birth, um, I got better for her. That was my main focus. I didn't realize that I could do it for me until this time around. Um, I wanted to quickly just touch on the fact that, it is so ripe right now, depression, more than it ever has been, especially in our young people. And the signs within our young people will be entirely different to an adult due to development. And I just wanted to share my experience with this a little bit before we close up. And I just wanted to touch on what some of those signs could be. Running away from home is a big one. Threatening to leave. Having really emotional breakdowns, having really, really sad days when all they do is cry, or be easily irritated, even by the simplest things. They might just be quiet all of a sudden and just not talk for, it might be hours, it might be days. You guys know your young people best, and if you see anything that's outside of character, and you get the sense that it may have an emotional tie to it, then it's time to start, asking internal questions as to what can I do to support my child, my young person, in this situation. And Happy Hearts House is here as an emotional health and wellness support and education community. What we are striving to do is to bring more connectedness and more resources to you guys in easily accessible ways through having online platforms, and hopefully in the future bringing out into the communities. And we're developing these services for you guys, for us all. This is time for change. It's time to open us up and make actual change that's going to last and going to create it's going to open up our potential as a community, as as parents, as young people, our futures, how we see ourselves, and and that's just it's important. And so if you have been if you do have any questions, or you do feel like you could learn something, or you could contribute something to the community, then don't be afraid to reach out to us. All our links are in the bio. And I just want to end on, if we can, something that people can do for themselves to take charge of their own emotional well-being, Leeza.
Something that you can do is make a choice and choose your life. Choose what to do. Choose one way or another, but know that you're choosing and taking responsibility for that choice. And just keep on moving, you know, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. What do we do?
Yes, well, definitely. I think my advice would be find something that you love, or reconcile something you loved as a kid and bring it back to yourself. Bring it back, because it's a gift that you can give to yourself, and it can open you up to a world that you didn't even know lived inside of you. It can bring back all the passion, all the joy. You just need to be actively working at it, and it's a choice, just like Leeza said. So
not because it is a gift, but you're a gift.
Yes, and you deserve it. You're worthy and you're capable and you're strong in your vulnerability.
Yes.
I want to thank you all for joining us today. Everybody on Instagram, everybody who's live in the YouTube chat. We appreciate you guys being here, and we, if anybody wants to continue the conversation, you can join as a member on our Spaces by Wix app, which the link's going to be in the descriptions after we finish this live. And also, if you do feel that you could need to make a change, or you need to talk or reach out to somebody, you can always reach out to Happy Hearts Hive crew, or you can use if you need, immediate help, the resources that we're going to leave in the descriptions below.
Thank you everyone so much. Thank you, Becca, for having me on Survival Guide, and thank you everyone who has joined in. I'm very happy to see you, and thank you.
I'm Becca, and I've been your host today on Happy Hearts Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll catch you next time. Until then, live with love.